Welcome to today's story, where we travel deep into the world of myth and mystery. This is a place where gods walk among waves, and the earth itself can tremble at a single command. Our journey begins with Poseidon, the mighty ruler of oceans, the feared shaker of the ground. He is a figure of power, both feared and respected, whose name echoes through legends of the ancient world. When sailors set out into the unknown, they whispered his name with hope for calm seas and safe return. When the land quivered beneath the feet of mortals, they believed it was Poseidon's trident striking below. Born from Cronus and Rhea, brother to Zeus and Hades, he was destined for a realm vast and untamed. The sea became his kingdom, endless, shifting, and alive with secrets that mortals could barely imagine. In his hands lay storms and silence, wrath and peace, all turning with the motion of tides and winds. But beyond fear, Poseidon also held wonder, inspiring myths that shaped the identity of cities and heroes. Tonight, we will uncover his stories, from divine contests to legendary gifts, from storms to symbols. So take a breath, listen closely, and step into the ancient world where oceans bow to their eternal king. Long before the seas were ruled, the story of Poseidon began in the halls of the Titans. Cronus, the great Titan father, feared his own children and swallowed them at birth. Yet fate is stronger than fear, and the children of Cronus were destined to rise. Rhea, their mother, longed to save her children from this cruel destiny. She devised a secret plan, hiding her youngest, Zeus, far from Cronus's sight. Zeus grew in secret, nurtured by care and guarded by whispers of prophecy. In time, Zeus rose with strength and freed his brothers and sisters from Cronus. From the darkness of their father's belly came Poseidon, strong and unbroken. Alongside Hades, Hera, Hestia, and Demeter, the children of Cronus stood tall. The bonds between them, though tested, became the roots of Olympus itself. Poseidon, unlike his siblings, carried with him the weight of the endless seas. Even at birth, myths say the sound of waves echoed when he cried aloud. His eyes reflected the storm, deep and untamed, a mirror of the ocean's soul. The gods grew quickly, their powers blooming like light, breaking through clouds. The Cyclopes, freed by the gods, forged gifts for the divine brothers. For Zeus, the thunderbolt; for Hades, the helm of invisibility; and for Poseidon, the trident, a weapon of might and endless mystery. The trident was no mere tool of war, but a key to command the seas. With 3 sharp prongs, it symbolized the vast power he would wield. Where it struck, springs of water could burst forth from the ground. Where it shone, storms could gather, and waves would obey their master. Poseidon's siblings looked to him with both awe and respect. For though Zeus ruled the sky and Hades claimed the underworld, Poseidon's realm was vast. The ocean stretched beyond sight, mysterious, unpredictable, alive with countless secrets. To the Greeks, the sea was a path to adventure and a threat to survival. Poseidon embodied both hope and danger, much like the waters themselves. He was not only brother to the gods, but guardian of those who sailed. Sailors whispered his name when waves grew tall and winds howled fiercely. They poured offerings into the sea, asking for calm passage across unknown waters. To mortals, he was both savior and storm, gentle tide and raging tempest. But even among gods, Poseidon's role was crucial and irreplaceable. His presence balanced the cosmos, giving each brother a realm to rule. Zeus commanded the heavens, vast and bright with stars and thunder. Hades reigned below, keeper of shadows and the unseen. And Poseidon stood between, ruling the seas that touched all shores. This division was not only practical, but a reflection of harmony and order. It allowed each god to thrive, yet their bonds remained ever complex. Poseidon often clashed with Zeus, for the sea and sky meet at the horizon. Yet in their rivalry lay balance, ensuring no one force grew unchecked. Poseidon's story begins here, not only as a brother, but as a king of a realm as infinite as imagination, as deep as human fear. Legends say his voice could calm a storm or awaken waves like mountains. His footsteps were said to shake the earth, reminding mortals of his might. But beyond his strength, his origin carries a message of destiny, that even in fear and darkness, greatness may rise with courage. Poseidon's birth marked the beginning of a legacy greater than the sea, a legacy that would ripple through myths, temples, and the hearts of mortals. From swallowed child to ruler of oceans, his journey reflects the power of fate. And so the tale of Poseidon begins, rooted in family, struggle, and triumph. It is a tale that flows like water, shifting, unstoppable, and eternal. After Cronus was defeated, the world stood at the edge of a new order, vast and full of possibility. The children of Cronus, now freed, had to decide how to divide the realms of existence. It was not a simple choice, for each domain carried both power and heavy responsibility. Zeus, youngest yet boldest, desired the sky, with its endless clouds and bright stars. Hades, quiet and steadfast, accepted the underworld, a shadowed kingdom of the unseen. Poseidon, strong and unyielding, received the seas, endless and restless, brimming with mystery. The three brothers cast lots, guided by fate, and each accepted the shared destiny granted. Thus the cosmos was shaped, sky, sea, and underworld, bound together yet apart. The earth itself, rich and green, belonged to all gods and mortals who walked its surface. This division gave balance to the universe, a harmony that reflected divine wisdom. Zeus's throne rose above the clouds, crowned with thunder and flashing light. Hades' kingdom stretched deep below, filled with silence and shadows untouchable by sun. Poseidon's palace gleamed beneath the sea, built of coral and shimmering with pearls. It was said that his halls glowed like stars beneath waves, a hidden world of wonder. From his throne, Poseidon ruled waters both calm and wild, near and far. His trident rested at his side, a symbol of authority, feared and honored by all. Mortals came to understand the order of realms as natural law itself. The heavens gave rain, the sea carried ships, and the underworld welcomed souls. When storms swept across seas, they knew it was Poseidon who stirred the waters. When lightning struck, Zeus was the hand behind the storm in the sky. When silence fell upon graves, Hades guarded the passage to the unseen. Together, the three brothers stood as pillars of the cosmos, each essential and eternal. But Poseidon's realm, unlike the others, touched all lands with its shores. Every city by the sea felt his power, whether in gentle tides or crashing waves. The Greeks saw in this division the truth of life's balance and limits. No god could rule all, for power without balance leads only to ruin. By sharing the cosmos, the brothers created a world both ordered and alive. Yet harmony was not without rivalry, for the sea often challenged the sky. Poseidon clashed with Zeus over storms as waves met thunder on the horizon. But these rivalries were not destruction. They were the rhythm of nature itself. The Greeks believed that in such struggles lay the balance of the world. Mortals prayed to each god in turn, knowing every domain held influence over them. To Poseidon, sailors offered prayers before voyages across uncertain waters. They poured wine into the sea, seeking calm tides and safe return to home. Farmers, too, honored him, for rivers and springs fed their fields with life. The division of realms was not only divine law, but a bond between gods and mortals. Poseidon's role, vast and complex, made him both feared and cherished. He was not only lord of oceans, but a guardian of life's fragile journeys. The sea was the link between lands, a path to trade, discovery, and adventure. Through Poseidon's domain, mortals reached distant shores and built their cities. Legends say his laughter could ripple the waves, while his anger raised storms. Yet even in anger, his power was seen as part of the natural world. Without Poseidon's sea, no ship could sail, no traveler could reach beyond. His rule was not tyranny, but the heartbeat of waters that touched all life. The division of realms gave him purpose, and his trident sealed his command. With Zeus in the heavens and Hades below, Poseidon stood as the bridge. He ruled the restless seas, but also shook the earth when balance was broken. Thus the three brothers, though separate, remained bound by destiny forever. And Poseidon's realm, vast and untamed, became the soul of mystery, motion. His story in this new world was only beginning, carried on the waves of time. The story of Poseidon cannot be told without speaking of his trident, the symbol of his might and rule. Forged by the Cyclopes, master craftsmen of divine power, it was unlike any weapon seen before. The trident gleamed with energy, three prongs sharp and flawless, embodying the endless strength of the sea. Legends say it was shaped in the fires of creation, where earth, water, and lightning met as one. It was not simply a tool of battle, but a sacred sign of Poseidon's dominion over oceans and earth. Where the trident struck, springs of water gushed forth, turning barren land into flowing streams. It could raise mountains of waves, or calm a raging sea into glassy silence within a breath. Mortals saw it as a miracle and a warning, a reminder of the god who held nature's pulse. The Cyclopes, in gifting it to Poseidon, ensured his place as a ruler of balance and might. Each prong carried a meaning: creation, destruction, and renewal, the eternal rhythm of the sea. For sailors, the sight of the trident was a symbol of hope when facing the unknown. For kings, it was a sign of Poseidon's favor, granting legitimacy and divine protection to their lands. The trident became more than an object. It was the voice of the sea itself. When Poseidon lifted it high, the sky darkened and the ocean trembled with anticipation. When he lowered it, peace returned, as though the waters exhaled at his command. The Greeks believed the trident held power over not just seas, but the very earth beneath. Earthquakes, sudden and terrifying, were thought to be Poseidon striking the ground in warning. Thus he became known not only as god of the sea, but also as the Earthshaker. This dual power made him one of the most feared and respected gods of Olympus. The trident's influence reached beyond myths, shaping rituals, prayers, and symbols across the ancient world. In temples, statues often showed Poseidon with his trident, tall and commanding, protector of the faithful. Sailors carved its image onto ships, believing it guided them safely through storms. Farmers prayed to it for water, hoping springs would flow and nourish their fields. Even in distant lands, the trident was seen as a mark of divine strength. It was a reminder that nature itself was alive, guided by unseen yet mighty hands. The trident's image endured through generations, carried in stories sung by poets and storytellers. Bards spoke of Poseidon striking the sea, splitting waves as if opening a path to destiny. Others told of him raising islands from the ocean, creating new lands with a single strike. Such tales were not just myths, but ways for mortals to explain the mysteries around them. Why did the earth shake? Why did waves rise? Why did springs appear from nowhere? The answer was always the same. Poseidon and his trident had spoken. To hold such power was not only to command, but also to shoulder immense responsibility. Poseidon, though often fierce, understood that the trident connected him to mortals and gods alike. It reminded him of his duty to rule wisely, balancing mercy with strength. He could drown armies with floods, yet he could also gift a village with fresh water. This duality reflected the very nature of the sea, giver of life and taker of it. The trident was not an end in itself, but a mirror of Poseidon's true essence. Through it, the Greeks saw a god both mighty and necessary, a force they could never ignore. His trident became a bridge between divine will and mortal lives, shaping destiny in unseen ways. Even today, the image of the trident lingers, carved into memory and culture. It is found in art, in stories, in symbols of power that echo the past. And at the heart of it all lies Poseidon, eternal ruler of oceans and quakes, bearing his sacred gift. Thus, the tale of the trident is not only about a weapon, but about the god who wields it. It is about the bond between sea and earth, chaos and order, power and peace. For as long as waves crash and the ground trembles, the story of Poseidon's trident will endure. Waves rise and fall in the distance, carrying whispers older than time. The sea breathes, alive, restless, and eternal. For the ancient Greeks, the ocean was both friend and foe. It gave life, food, and passage. Yet it could also swallow ships whole. At the heart of this mystery stood one powerful figure, a god with a trident in hand and storms in his eyes. His name was Poseidon, ruler of oceans and master of earthquakes. Born from the union of Cronus and Rhea, he carried destiny in his veins. His kingdom stretched across endless waters, reaching every distant shore. He was more than a god of the sea. He shaped the earth itself. When his trident struck, the ground shook, mountains trembled, cities wavered. To sailors, he was a guardian or a destroyer, depending on his mood. To kings, he was a force to be honored with temples and sacrifices. To poets, he was eternal, a symbol of mystery and power. Even today, the name Poseidon echoes like a wave against stone, a reminder of nature's might, untamed and unstoppable. This is the story of Poseidon, the ruler of oceans and earthquakes. The story of Poseidon begins long before he ruled the seas. He was born into a world where gods and titans fought for power. His father, Cronus, feared his children would rise against him. One by one, Cronus swallowed each child at birth. Poseidon's fate seemed sealed, lost in darkness within his father. But destiny never allows such power to remain hidden forever. Rhea, his mother, longed to protect her children from despair. She hid Zeus, her youngest, far from Cronus's hungry grasp. Years passed, and Zeus grew strong enough to challenge his father. With the help of Metis, Zeus tricked Cronus into releasing his siblings. From the shadows emerged Poseidon, reborn into light and freedom. The world he entered was trembling, caught between chaos and order. Poseidon was no longer a helpless child, but a force of nature. He stood beside Zeus and Hades, his brothers, in unity. Together, they vowed to end the tyranny of Cronus forever. The war that followed was known as the Titanomachy, the Great Clash. Mountains shook, skies thundered, and seas roared with violent power. Poseidon lifted his trident, commanding waves to strike the enemy. His strength was felt across land and sea, unstoppable and fierce. He was the embodiment of the ocean's rage and resilience. Zeus brought lightning, Hades brought shadows, Poseidon brought storms. Each strike pushed the Titans closer to defeat and despair. For 10 long years, the battle raged without rest or mercy. Poseidon never wavered, his resolve deep as the ocean floor. Every clash of his trident echoed the heartbeat of the sea. At last, the Titans were overcome, their reign broken forever. The Olympian gods stood victorious, claiming their rightful thrones. Yet triumph brought questions: how to divide the vast cosmos. The brothers knew the world must be shared in balance. Zeus took the sky, eternal and infinite, above all. Hades took the underworld, deep and silent beneath the earth. Poseidon received the sea, boundless, mysterious, and untamed. It was not a lesser prize, but a destiny of grandeur. For the ocean touches every shore, connects every distant land. It hides treasures, creatures, and secrets beyond mortal sight. Poseidon accepted this realm with pride, strength, and solemn duty. His kingdom was vast, stretching farther than imagination could wander. Beneath the waves, he would build a palace of shining coral. Jewels, pearls, and golden sands decorated his underwater domain. From there, he would command tides, storms, and the restless deep. But Poseidon was more than a keeper of waves and salt. He was also given power over the trembling earth itself. When his trident struck, mountains cracked and cities trembled. He was not just Lord of Seas, but the Earthshaker too. This dual power made him both feared and worshipped by mortals. To them, he was a god who could bless or curse. His story was just beginning, but his presence was eternal. From the darkness of Cronus's prison to the vast blue seas. Poseidon rose, unstoppable, majestic, ruler of oceans and quakes. The Titanomachy was more than a battle. It was a struggle for the future of the cosmos. The Titans had ruled for ages, their power stretching across heaven and earth. Cronus, their leader, had seized the throne by overthrowing his own father. But now his children, the Olympians, had risen to challenge his reign. Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades stood at the center of this great rebellion. Beside them were Hera, Demeter, and Hestia, their sisters, bound in unity. The younger gods faced an enemy, ancient, proud, and unwilling to yield. The war began with thunder on the mountains and storms on the seas. Poseidon's trident churned the waters into towering waves and crashing tides. He summoned whirlpools to engulf the strongholds of the Titans. Zeus hurled bolts of lightning, splitting the sky into fire and smoke. Hades spread shadows that twisted the battlefield into fearsome illusions. Yet the Titans were not weak, for they held the strength of eternity. Atlas carried the weight of the heavens, unbroken and defiant. Hyperion blazed like the sun itself, his fire scorching the land. The war raged for years, each side refusing to bend or break. Mountains were torn apart, rivers shifted, and valleys sank into the sea. The world trembled under the clash of gods and titans alike. Still, the balance was against the young Olympians, who lacked numbers. The tide shifted only when new allies rose to aid them. The hundred-handed giants, once imprisoned, were freed to join the fight. Their arms hurled boulders like storms of stone upon the Titans. The Cyclopes, grateful for release, forged weapons of divine power. Zeus received the thunderbolt, Poseidon the trident, Hades the helm of darkness. These gifts turned the tide, amplifying their strength beyond measure. Poseidon's trident split the seas and shook the very earth beneath. Every strike carried the roar of oceans crashing against the world. Titans stumbled, their fortresses shattered under the relentless assault. For the first time, the ancient rulers tasted the sting of defeat. But still they fought, unwilling to surrender their ancient dominion. The battle stretched for a decade, a war that seemed without end. Gods and titans alike endured wounds of spirit and body alike. The cries of battle echoed through valleys, mountains, and across the seas. Poseidon, steadfast, fought with the patience of the deep ocean. His presence was calm yet terrifying, like still waters hiding storms. He knew the sea never tires, never yields, but always returns. That truth became his strength, wearing down the Titan's resistance. At last, the decisive clash arrived, when all powers converged in fury. Zeus unleashed storms of lightning that blinded the battlefield in fire. Hades cloaked the Titans in shadows they could not escape. Poseidon raised his trident high, striking the earth with divine force. The ground opened, seas roared, mountains shattered into dust and stone. The Titans fell, unable to withstand the combined wrath of the gods. Cronus was cast down, his reign broken, his power forever stripped. The age of the Titans ended, and the dawn of the Olympians began. Victory was not only strength, but the unity of the siblings. Together they had stood, and together they had prevailed at last. The Titanomachy ended, but its echoes remained in the trembling earth. The gods had reshaped the world, and their thrones were waiting. For Poseidon, it was a moment of destiny fulfilled and power claimed. The seas, the storms, and the trembling ground awaited his rule. Thus the Earthshaker stepped into his role, a god forged in war. From the ashes of the Titans, his legend would forever rise. When the war was over, silence spread across the battered world. The skies were torn, the seas restless, the earth still trembling. The Titans had fallen, and the Olympians stood ready to rule. But victory raised a question no one could ignore: how to divide it all. The cosmos was vast, and each brother sought his rightful share. Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades, the three sons of Cronus, stood together. They had fought as one, but now they faced a choice of destiny. No god could claim the whole, for balance was essential to order. Thus they decided to cast lots, leaving fate to guide their hands. The moment was solemn, for the decision would shape eternity. Zeus reached into the lot first, and the sky became his throne. The heavens opened to him, endless, infinite, crowned with clouds and stars. Next came Hades, who drew the underworld, dark and silent below. His kingdom would be shadows, spirits, and the mysteries of death. At last, Poseidon placed his hand into fate's unseen grasp. What he drew was the sea, boundless and untamed, stretching forever. Some thought it the lesser realm, but Poseidon saw its majesty. For the sea touched every land, every shore, every distant horizon. It carried ships, treasures, and dreams of those who dared to sail. Beneath its surface lived countless creatures, unseen by mortal eyes. The sea was life, death, mystery, and power, all at once. Poseidon accepted his realm with pride, his heart swelling with purpose. The brothers agreed, and thus the world was divided in three. Zeus ruled above, Hades below, Poseidon between them both. Together they formed a balance, each god holding his sacred realm. But Poseidon's dominion was not limited to waves and waters. He also carried the power of the earth itself beneath the sea. When his trident struck, the ground quaked and mountains trembled. He was named Earthshaker, master of both sea and trembling land. Mortals would learn to fear his storms and respect his calm. Sailors prayed before voyages, offering gifts to appease his temper. Kings built temples near the shore, seeking his blessing for their cities. For the sea could bring prosperity or ruin with a single tide. Poseidon's palace rose beneath the waters, shining with coral and gems. Columns of pearl and walls of crystal reflected the ocean's glow. Here he sat upon a golden throne, ruler of the deep. Around him swam dolphins, seahorses, and creatures born of salt. It was a kingdom unlike any other, hidden from mortal sight. From there he watched the surface world, shaping waves and guiding storms. To him, the sea was alive, breathing with eternal rhythm. Its calm spoke of peace. Its storms thundered with divine anger. This power was not just gift, but burden, for balance was fragile. Poseidon knew the ocean could nurture, but it could also consume. The division of realms marked the birth of a new order. Olympians took their thrones, and the world entered an age of gods. Poseidon's name spread quickly across islands, harbors, and coastal lands. Fishermen whispered his name when casting nets into deep waters. Merchants prayed for calm seas to carry their cargo to distant ports. Travelers feared his anger, knowing storms could rise without warning. Yet all honored him, for without the sea no life could endure. Poseidon's trident gleamed as both promise and threat, balance and power. The choice of fate had given him the ocean, but he made it his own. From the rolling waves to the trembling earth, his dominion was absolute. And so began the reign of Poseidon, ruler of oceans and earthquakes. Poseidon's power was not defined only by his throne beneath the sea. It was seen in the symbols that marked him as ruler of the deep. Above all stood the trident, a weapon of 3 sharp prongs and divine might. Forged by the Cyclopes, it carried the power of oceans and quakes. In Poseidon's hand, the trident was more than metal and form. It was the extension of his will, the voice of the waters. With it, he could stir gentle waves or summon raging storms. He could calm the sea for sailors or sink entire fleets with ease. Mortals feared its strike, for the earth itself trembled under its touch. A single thrust could crack mountains, open the ground, or shake cities. Because of this, Poseidon was named not only Sea Lord, but Earthshaker. The duality of water and land rested within his grasp. His dominion was vast, stretching farther than the mortal mind could measure. The sea, unlike the sky or underworld, was a living mystery. It moved, shifted, and changed without end, a mirror of Poseidon's moods. When he was calm, the waters sparkled, gentle and welcoming. When anger stirred, the sea turned violent, wild, and unforgiving. Every tide was a reminder that his power touched all corners of earth. No kingdom, no city, no island was beyond his influence. To mortals, his symbols were sacred, a language of divine presence. The horse, strong and untamed, was also linked to Poseidon's essence. Legends told that he created the first horse, shaping it from waves. Its power, speed, and freedom reflected the restless force of the sea. Thus, Poseidon was honored not only as Sea Lord, but as horse god. Riders and charioteers prayed to him for speed and victory. His temples often held images of horses beside dolphins and waves. These creatures together showed the breadth of his dominion and gifts. Dolphins were seen as his messengers, playful yet sacred in form. When sailors saw dolphins guiding ships, they believed Poseidon had blessed them. The trident, the horse, and the dolphin became his sacred symbols. Each spoke of strength, freedom, guidance, and the deep unknown. His chariot, pulled by seahorses, was another mark of his majesty. When he rode across the waves, the sea calmed beneath his wheels. Foam rose like clouds, and dolphins leapt in joy around him. The image struck awe in mortals, who bowed to his grandeur. In every temple, artists carved these symbols to honor his reign. Columns bore tridents, horses ran along friezes, dolphins swam in stone. Through symbols, Poseidon lived in the minds of mortals everywhere. They were not mere decorations, but reminders of divine presence. Each reminded mortals of his power to destroy or protect. Every prayer, every offering, was given with hope for his favor. A fisherman's net was cast with a whisper of Poseidon's name. A rider urged a horse forward, invoking the god of speed. A sailor crossing unknown waters left tokens for his safe return. Thus, Poseidon's symbols were woven into every act of daily life. They bridged the mortal and the divine, sea and earth alike. Poseidon himself stood as a symbol, the embodiment of natural power. His trident was justice, his horse was freedom, his dolphin was mercy. Through these, his image became timeless, never fading from memory. Even now, when waves crash or the earth trembles, his name lingers. Poseidon, ruler of oceans and earthquakes, marked forever by his sacred signs. Poseidon's influence was not bound to oceans and symbols alone. It reached into the heart of cities, temples, and sacred places. Every coast that touched the Mediterranean carried whispers of his name. Mortals built shrines, altars, and sanctuaries to honor his dominion. In Greece, Corinth was one of the greatest centers of his worship. The Isthmian Games were held there, sacred contests in his name. Athletes gathered from across the lands to compete in strength and skill. These games were not only sport, but an act of devotion. Victors believed Poseidon's blessing guided their speed and endurance. At the heart of Corinth stood his great temple, proud and mighty. Columns rose tall, echoing the strength of the Earthshaker himself. Pilgrims came to leave offerings of oil, wine, and crafted gifts. Sailors prayed for safe voyages before daring to face open waters. Farmers invoked his name for fertile soil and gentle rains. Horse breeders left tokens to honor his gift of steeds. His worship reached beyond Greece into the islands and coasts. On Tenos and Delos, temples stood by the sparkling Aegean waves. Every island that thrived on sea trade bowed to his majesty. Even far-flung sailors called upon him in the unknown depths. For without Poseidon, no journey across the sea was secure. His sanctuaries often rested near water, rivers, or coastal cliffs. The sound of waves was the music of his eternal hymn. Priests led rituals, pouring libations into the sea as offerings. Animals were gifted to him, but always with sacred reverence. Prayers rose with the wind, seeking balance in storm and calm. His worship united mortals with the living pulse of nature. In the festivals, hymns told of his birth and mighty reign. Dancers moved like waves, rising and falling in rhythmic grace. Musicians played pipes and drums that echoed the sea's roar. Through these acts, mortals kept his power alive in their world. The god was both protector and punisher, depending on devotion. To neglect him was to invite misfortune, storms, or quakes. To honor him was to gain safe passage and bountiful harvests. The presence of his cult was a bond between land and sea. It reminded mortals that survival depended on respect for the divine. For the Greeks, gods were not distant figures, but woven into life. Poseidon, more than most, shaped their destiny with each tide. A sailor crossing to Italy would never leave without an offering. A merchant leaving Corinth would bow at Poseidon's altar for luck. A farmer watching clouds prayed storms would not drown the crops. Every act of daily life could echo with his unseen presence. The sound of waves crashing was his voice in mortal ears. The trembling ground beneath feet was his reminder of dominion. Even silence at sea felt like a sign of his attention. Temples stood as proof that his hand touched all of existence. The sea provided food, wealth, and pathways to distant lands. Yet it also threatened storms that could erase a city overnight. Poseidon was at the center of that eternal balance of fate. His worship was not just faith, but survival for humankind. The Isthmian Games, the temples, the offerings, all spoke one truth. To live in harmony with the sea was to live with Poseidon. The god demanded respect, not fear, from those who honored him. And in return, he offered the blessing of safe journeys and strength. Through devotion, mortals found their bond to the ocean divine. In every prayer, in every ritual, Poseidon's name was carried. He was the lord of tides, but also the guardian of hope. Thus, his worship lived on, eternal as the waves that never rest. The myths of Poseidon are woven with tales of rivalry and contest. Among them stands the story of his struggle with Athena. Both deities sought to claim the city that would bear their name. The land was rich, the people strong, the future bright with promise. Poseidon rose from the sea, carrying his mighty trident of power. He struck the earth, and from the ground a spring burst forth. Its waters shone in the sun, a sign of his divine gift. He promised wealth from the seas and strength through naval mastery. But the water was salty, not fit for mortals to drink. The people marveled, yet hesitated, for they needed sustenance to thrive. Athena then stepped forward, calm and wise in her bearing. She planted a seed that grew into a silver-green olive tree. The tree offered fruit, wood, and oil to light their lamps. It was a gift of life, enduring and full of peace. The people judged Athena's gift greater, for it sustained them daily. Thus, the city was named Athens, in honor of her wisdom. Poseidon's pride was wounded, his temper fierce as storming waves. He cursed the land with drought, withholding water from the fields. Yet over time his anger softened, for mortals still revered him. They built shrines at the sea's edge to honor his domain. Athens itself, though devoted to Athena, never forgot the sea. Its people became sailors, merchants, and masters of naval strength. In this way, Poseidon's gift lived on despite his loss. The rivalry told more than a tale of gods in conflict. It was a story of balance between wisdom and force. Athena offered peace, knowledge, and growth from the land's bounty. Poseidon offered strength, power, and mastery over the unpredictable sea. Together, their gifts shaped Athens into a city of might. It thrived on olives and oil, yet ruled the waves abroad. The myth showed mortals that even in loss, a god's gift endures. Poseidon, though defeated, remained vital to the life of the city. His story echoed in temples where both deities were honored side by side. On the Acropolis, the Parthenon rose for Athena's glory, yet nearby stood marks of Poseidon's trident etched in sacred stone. Mortals knew that both had left their divine imprint on the land, for no city could live by wisdom alone without the sea, and no fleet could sail forever without peace upon the shore. The rivalry was eternal, yet it bound them together in fate. Athens stood as proof of the union of land and sea. Poseidon's name was still spoken by sailors leaving its harbors. They poured libations, prayed for calm waters, and safe returns. His blessing was sought before every voyage, every act of trade. Though Athena held the city, Poseidon held their destiny at sea. This story revealed much about the nature of the gods. They were not perfect, not always just, but deeply tied to mortals. Their quarrels shaped nations, their gifts decided the course of history. Poseidon's rivalry with Athena showed pride, loss, and endurance. But it also showed that even in defeat, power remains. For the sea never ceases, and its lord is never forgotten. Every wave that touched Athens' shore was his silent reminder. Every quake that shook its stones was his unseen hand. Poseidon's myth lived not only in glory, but also in rivalry. And through this contest, his presence grew timeless, as vast as the sea. Poseidon's myths extend far beyond cities and temples into the lives of heroes. Among these stories is his bond with the mighty Theseus of Athens. Theseus, famed for courage and wit, was believed to be Poseidon's son. Though raised as a mortal prince, his lineage was touched by the divine. His mother Aethra, visited by both King Aegeus and Poseidon, bore him. Thus Theseus carried within him the strength of mortal and god alike. From youth, he showed bravery, embarking on quests that tested his soul. He cleared roads of bandits, facing dangers to protect his people. Each victory drew whispers that Poseidon's blood flowed in his veins. But his greatest trial came when Athens faced a cruel tribute. Every 9 years, 7 youths and 7 maidens were sent to Crete. They were cast into the labyrinth to be devoured by the Minotaur. The people despaired, their cries reaching gods and kings alike. Theseus volunteered to sail to Crete and end the horror. Armed with courage and guided by divine favor, he entered the maze. Ariadne's thread led him through, but it was his valor that triumphed. When the Minotaur fell, Athens was freed from its dreadful burden. Many believed Poseidon's unseen hand had steadied his son's resolve. The sea god's presence was felt in the winds that carried the ship. It was said dolphins swam beside Theseus as he returned home. The bond between father and son was never declared with words. Yet, in each wave that rose and calmed, the link was clear. Theseus carried Poseidon's spirit, restless, bold, and destined for greatness. In Athens, his triumphs became legend, shaping him as a hero king. But his sea-born heritage revealed itself again in later tales. When Theseus threw a ring into the sea to prove his origin, he dove beneath the waves, and dolphins guided him to Poseidon's realm. There, in the glittering halls beneath the ocean, he was welcomed. Poseidon's kingdom opened before him, filled with light and shimmering life. Theseus returned to the surface with gifts from the Sea Lord. This journey confirmed to all that his lineage was truly divine. The sea had claimed him as its child, its champion among mortals. Theseus's story was more than a tale of strength and cunning. It was the bridge between mortal struggle and divine legacy. Poseidon's presence gave his path purpose, linking land and sea. In Athens, people honored Theseus not only as a king. They saw him as the living echo of Poseidon's restless force. Every voyage, every ship that left the port remembered his name. The bond of father and son shaped the destiny of a city. It tied Athens to the ocean, to the power of the deep. Through Theseus, Poseidon's influence touched both palace and battlefield. His triumphs became part of the god's legacy as much as his own. The myths remind us that Poseidon was not distant or silent. He moved through mortal lives, guiding, testing, and shaping their fate. Theseus stood as proof of the bond between gods and men. Born of 2 worlds, he carried the spirit of both within him. His story echoed across generations, told by sailors, kings, and poets. Every retelling strengthened the connection between Athens and the sea. And behind the hero's tale, the shadow of Poseidon always lingered. For though he was not the city's patron, his bloodline lived there. In every tide that touched its shores, his presence endured. Through Theseus, Poseidon's legacy reached not just oceans, but the heart of men. Poseidon's myths often reveal his presence in the journeys of wandering heroes. Among them was Odysseus, king of Ithaca, famed for wit and cunning. His tale, the Odyssey, is marked by Poseidon's restless power and wrath. Odysseus had blinded the Cyclops Polyphemus, who was Poseidon's son. The giant cried out to his father, calling for vengeance from the sea. Thus, Poseidon turned his gaze upon Odysseus and cursed his voyage. Every wave, every storm, carried the weight of the sea god's anger. Odysseus longed for Ithaca, yet the waters denied him passage. Ships shattered, men lost, and years stretched like endless tides. Each time he neared home, the sea rose to block his way. The god was not merely punishing, but reminding him of mortal limits. Against divine power, even the cleverest of men was but a shadow. Still, Odysseus endured, guided by Athena and his own fierce will. The struggle between Poseidon and Odysseus became legend of defiance and fate. Mortals saw in it the lesson of respect for the sea. No matter how skilled, a sailor was always at Poseidon's mercy. The sea could be path to glory or grave of forgotten names. Yet within this rivalry lay the deeper truth of divine power. Poseidon was not only anger, but the embodiment of life's challenges. His storms tested men, forcing them to grow through trial and hardship. Without struggle, there could be no triumph, no tale worth remembering. Thus, Odysseus's long journey became more than punishment. It was transformation. Each island, each trial, forged him into something greater than before. When at last he reached Ithaca, he was no longer the same. He was a man tempered by sea, storm, and Poseidon's hand. The bond between god and mortal was never one of simple favor. It was a relationship of struggle, learning, and enduring beyond limits. Odysseus may have cursed Poseidon, but he owed him growth. For without storms, the sailor cannot learn the strength of his craft. Without distance, the heart cannot know the weight of longing for home. In this way, Poseidon shaped Odysseus's story as much as Athena did. The god was present in every tide that turned him from Ithaca. His power was both obstacle and teacher, both curse and gift. The Odyssey thus became not just a tale of return, it became a story of man versus the sea, mortal versus divine. Every listener understood the lesson. To sail was to face Poseidon. His presence lingered in every harbor, every cresting wave, every whispering gale. For sailors, Odysseus's struggle was their own, repeated across generations. They knew storms were more than chance. They were the god's reminder. To respect the sea was to respect Poseidon, lord of its depths. Even kings bowed to his will, for no throne could master the ocean. Odysseus's defiance showed courage, but his endurance showed wisdom. For wisdom lies not only in outsmarting, but in surviving what cannot be stopped. Poseidon's rivalry with Odysseus was fierce, yet it made the tale eternal. The sea god's role in the Odyssey was not villain, but force of fate. He was the tide that shaped the hero, the trial that forged the man. And so, through Odysseus, Poseidon's presence was immortalized in epic song. For whenever sailors speak of storms, they recall not just winds and waves. They recall the god whose hand stirs the waters, whose will guides the sea. Poseidon, eternal Earthshaker, forever tied to the journeys of men. The myths of Poseidon stretch beyond Greece, carried by sailors across distant waters. As ships ventured further, the sea became the great connector of cultures. In every land touched by the waves, the sea bore stories of its own. Yet Poseidon's essence could be felt in many of these foreign myths. The Romans knew him as Neptune, their god of the sea and horses. Though the names differed, the deep respect for ocean power remained the same. Neptune, like Poseidon, held a trident and stirred waves with his will. Roman poets sang of him riding chariots pulled by gleaming seahorses. To them, he was guardian of sailors, yet swift to anger when slighted. Temples rose in port cities, where offerings sought safe passage across waters. In Italy, Neptune's festivals honored the balance between man and sea. Fishermen prayed for bounty, while merchants sought calm seas for trade. The god's presence stretched even further, beyond the Mediterranean shores. Phoenician sailors told tales of storm gods, fierce and unpredictable as Poseidon. Across the ancient Near East, the sea was often linked with chaos. Yet within that chaos was life, renewal, and the testing of human spirit. Even in far lands, echoes of Poseidon's might found resonance. In the north, seafarers spoke of Aegir, the Norse giant of the sea. Though not identical, his feasts, storms, and wrath mirrored Poseidon's ways. To the Celts, too, the sea was both pathway and peril, worthy of reverence. Myths converged, showing humanity's shared awe of the vast waters. Though languages changed, the sea remained universal, a god in all but name. Poseidon, Neptune, Aegir, different names, one force that bound mankind together. For to live by the sea was to understand its unpredictable nature. It could nourish, granting fish in trade, or rise, swallowing all in fury. Thus, cultures everywhere mirrored the duality the Greeks knew in Poseidon, a friend to the faithful, a punisher to the arrogant or careless. Seafarers carried amulets, charms, and prayers against storms, honoring the unseen ruler. The rituals reflected one truth: the ocean was divine, not merely water. Every offering thrown into the waves was a conversation with the sea. Coins, wine, and animals were cast into depths as signs of devotion. To neglect the sea was to invite misfortune, a truth all sailors feared. And so Poseidon lived not only in Greek myth, but in human memory. His essence crossed borders, woven into the very fabric of maritime life. Each tide, each voyage, bore his unseen hand, guiding or warning. The Greeks may have named him, but the world knew him in spirit. Every culture by the shore understood the same eternal lesson. The ocean was vast, sacred, and beyond mortal control. And Poseidon, or Neptune, or whatever name was given, was its eternal lord. In this way, the sea god transcended myth and became universal. He was not only a Greek god, but the voice of the waves themselves. Every crash of surf upon stone, every whisper of tide was his song. Through shared fear, hope, and reverence, mankind remembered him across time. Poseidon, ruler of oceans, belonged to no single people but to all. His power was the bond between distant lands, carried by every sailor. The sea was the true temple, and the horizon his eternal altar. In this, Poseidon's presence grew beyond myth into everlasting human truth. Wherever waves touched land, his story was told in a different tongue. But always, it carried the same meaning. The sea belongs to the god, and mankind sails only by his allowance, never by its own alone. Legends of Poseidon often highlight his dual role as both giver and taker of blessings. Among his gifts to humankind was the horse, a creature of speed and strength. The Greeks believed Poseidon shaped the first horse from the sea's foam. With a strike of his trident, the animal sprang forth, wild and proud. This gift linked the god not only to oceans, but also to the land. Horses became symbols of nobility, freedom, and power in Greek culture. Warriors rode them into battle. Kings displayed them as signs of wealth. Yet beneath every hoofbeat echoed the memory of Poseidon's divine gift. Races, festivals, and ceremonies honored both the horse and its maker. In Olympia, horses thundered across tracks, stirring dust and shouts of crowds. Behind each race was the unspoken reverence for Poseidon's creation. He was known not only as Earthshaker, but also as horse tamer. The sea god's temples sometimes stood near stables instead of harbors. Priests offered wreaths and libations, for both calm seas and strong steeds. For Greeks, the horse was proof of Poseidon's generosity and creativity. But generosity in myth was always paired with divine demand for respect. The same god who gave horses could also summon quakes beneath hooves. It was a reminder that blessings carried responsibility, not just joy. The horse was to be cherished, not abused, lest Poseidon's anger stir. Kings who mistreated the gift often found misfortune upon their rule. Tales tell of rulers who boasted, forgetting the god's hand in their fortune. Their arrogance led to downfall, swift as a storm over calm waters. In this balance lay Poseidon's true nature, the balance of life itself. Creation and destruction, gift and punishment, tide and ebb. The horse embodied this lesson, standing as a bridge between land and sea. For sailors, Poseidon ruled the outer waves, but for warriors, he ruled the steeds. The god's reach extended into every aspect of Greek life and myth. Even in art, Poseidon appeared not only with Trident, but with horses. Chariots drawn by seahorses carried him across foaming waters. The image reflected harmony between earth, sea, and divine power. It showed Poseidon's domain was not confined to one element alone. Instead, he embodied movement, speed, and unstoppable force in all forms. Horses leaping across plains mirrored waves crashing upon rocky shores. Both carried energy, freedom, and danger within their beauty. This connection deepened the Greeks' respect for the god's vast power. To own a horse was to hold a fragment of Poseidon's spirit. Every neigh, every gallop, was a reminder of the god who gave it. Festivals dedicated to Poseidon often featured horse races and sacrifices. The people celebrated his dual gifts, the endless sea and the noble steed. Through these traditions, Poseidon's role in culture became ever stronger. He was not distant, but present in everyday lives through symbols and rituals. The horse was no mere animal, but a divine link between mortals and gods. Its strength reminded people of the wildness of the sea itself. Its loyalty reflected the bond between humankind and divine forces. Thus, Poseidon was remembered not only as a god of storms, he was also the creator of beauty, freedom, and earthly strength. To honor him was to respect both sea and land, both horse and wave. This duality ensured his myths endured across centuries of storytelling. The horse galloped through history, carrying Poseidon's legacy with every stride. Even today, the horse remains a symbol of freedom and power. Few recall its mythic origin, but the god's presence lingers in its image. Poseidon's gift still runs across fields, carrying whispers of the sea. For in every gallop, one can hear the echo of waves against stone, and in every storm, the Earthshaker's hand still guides the world. The story of Poseidon is not merely one of myth, but of timeless truth. He was the sea, the storm, and the trembling earth beneath human feet. His trident symbolized not only destruction, but the power to shape worlds. Through waves, horses, and earthquakes, Poseidon revealed life's dual nature. He was giver and taker, protector and punisher, calm tide and raging storm. To the Greeks, he was a reminder that nature could not be mastered. No wall, no ship, no kingdom stood beyond the reach of his will. Yet within his force lay lessons that echoed through generations of sailors. Odysseus's journey, Atlantis' fall, and countless myths carried his eternal mark. Each tale whispered the same truth: respect the balance between man and sea. Poseidon's myths endured because they spoke to something deeply human: the desire to travel, to explore, to conquer, yet also to survive. Every sailor setting out knew the ocean was not merely water, it was alive. a realm ruled by a god, both just and mercurial. Temples may now stand in ruins, but his presence lingers in the waves. Each crash against the shore is an echo of Poseidon's restless voice. Each ripple across still waters carries the calm side of his spirit. Even earthquakes remind us of his ancient title, the Earthshaker. Though centuries pass, the earth still trembles with his unseen hand, and the sea still swells as if stirred by his eternal trident. Modern ships cross oceans with steel, yet sailors still whisper prayers. They know storms remain as unpredictable as in the days of myth. Science may chart the tides, but awe still belongs to the divine. For in the heart of every storm, Poseidon's spirit still resides. He remains more than a character in stories, more than a forgotten god. He is the embodiment of humanity's relationship with nature itself. A reminder that power is to be respected, not taken for granted. That freedom comes with risk, and beauty with untamed force. The Greeks told his stories not only to honor him, but to teach, to warn, to inspire, to remind mortals of humility before the sea. In this way, Poseidon's legacy is not trapped in the past. It lives in every voyage, every quake, every whisper of waves. For as long as oceans exist, so too will his myth endure. The world may change, but the sea remains eternal, as does its ruler. And Poseidon, the great Earthshaker, still watches from beneath the waves. He waits in silence, his trident ready, his gaze upon the horizon. Not as an enemy, not only as a god, but as a presence eternal, a force both feared and revered, shaping lives without speaking a word. His story is humanity's story, woven into the rhythm of the sea. From the first ship launched to the last, his name will be remembered. Sailors will still speak of him when storms test their courage. Poets will still invoke his name when waves crash upon lonely shores. And dreamers will still feel him in the pull of distant horizons. Poseidon is not gone, nor ever will he be, for he is eternal. He is the restless sea, the roaring quake, the wild gallop of horses. He is mystery, danger, and beauty, bound into one immortal form. And so, when the waves rise, listen closely to their song, for in them echoes the ancient voice of the god of the deep. Poseidon, ruler of oceans and earthquakes, forever bound to humankind.